My name is Roman. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm 23 years old. I was born in 1995. And my story starts with my parents. Both my mom and dad are just amazing people of faith who truly love Jesus, and they've taught me everything that I know about Him. I'm so glad that they're my parents, and God gave me a perfect gift. My mom became a believer when she was 16 years old. She heard the word of Jesus Christ for the very first time back then, and it completely transformed her life. She watched a simple Jesus film, and because of that movie, her life changed, and now she follows Jesus. My dad was born in a Christian family, but he hated Jesus his whole life. He didn't want nothing to do with Jesus. But one night, Jesus touched his heart and transformed him completely. Both of them, when they got married, my mom was only 17, my dad was 20. Both of them decided that we want to follow Jesus with everything that we have. We're going to commit our lives to Him. We will surrender everything to Him. And when I was born, my parents decided that they will be in full-time ministry in Uzbekistan. At that time, Uzbekistan was becoming more and more persecuted. More and more people were getting killed, put in prison, fined for knowing Jesus. And at that time, many Christians started fleeing Uzbekistan into the United States. So my dad's side of the family, because they were all Christian, said, we're going to move to the United States. And my dad and mom had a choice to move there, to a land of dreams and opportunity, to a land where anything can happen. Uzbekistan was a land of poverty and broken dreams. And so God spoke clearly to my mom and dad in that moment that we are going to stay in Uzbekistan. Everybody did not understand. What are you talking about? Let's go and move to the United States with us. My mom and dad said, no, voice of God is more important than anything else. We want to listen to Him and obey what He has to say. And so when they decided to stay in Uzbekistan, things started to be very bad. Uzbekistan became the 7th most persecuted country in the world. Christians were getting put in prison every single day. I remember growing up, my mom and dad would show my brother and I movies like Schindler's List, What a Beautiful Life, movies where many children lost their parents, movies where there was lots of death. And mom and dad would tell us, look, if these kids can survive and they don't even know God, you guys can survive without us. You have a Father in heaven who will take care of you forever. We will be on this life only for a short time, but your Father in heaven will be with you forever. And I remember growing up thinking that any day I will lose my mom and dad. Any day they might not come back home. And for us, it was almost like a normal feeling. There were nights when my brother and I were sitting together in our room waiting for our dad to come home, and he wasn't there. And the reason was because he was put in prison. There were nights when we never knew if he would ever come back. I remember one time I was picking up the phone and police called and they said, can we speak to your dad? And I said, no, my dad is not home. And so they said, okay, pass this on to your dad. If he doesn't stop what he's doing, we will cut your whole family into pieces. Is that worth it? And in that moment, I asked myself a question. Is God worth all the suffering? Is God really worth it? Or is it something that we're just doing for ourselves? Why are we doing this? Why are we sacrificing everything for God? And in that moment, my parents told me that God is worth everything. The gospel, the resurrection is worth everything. The cross has changed everything for our lives. It is bringing new life to others. In that moment, they taught me that our crucifixion will bring resurrections to others. Our suffering will bring life. Our death will bring renewal. And I understood that suffering for God is worth it all. That the message of the gospel needs to be spread out throughout the whole earth. And so finally, the government had enough. Nothing was stopping my parents. They continued in their faith for years and years. Hundreds of people became believers throughout their ministry. And finally, the government said, you have 48 hours to leave. I remember that morning like it was still yesterday. Dad got a call from the police station. He said, I need to go to the police station. I cannot hide. We would hide from the police for a long time, but he said, I need to go. If I don't go, something bad will happen. And so he went to the police station. We gathered all together. He said to his wife, to my mom, Victoria, that she needs to go and hide in a different place. And my brother and I, 4 of us came together. And at that moment, we were all crying. We were all crying, and all my mom had with her was her Bible. But we were crying because we didn't know if we will ever see each other. We thought this might be the last time we're all together. I was 11 at that time. My brother was 9 years old. And we thought, this is it. We were praying together, hugging each other, saying our goodbyes. But in that moment, there was a smile in my mom's and dad's faces. They were smiling. And I asked, why are you smiling? This might be the last time you see your husband, last time you see your wife, last time you see your kids. Why are you smiling? And my mom said that she's happy that she gets to suffer for Christ. She's happy that she gets to be in suffering for Him. That changed everything for me. In that moment, I thought, I'm going to suffer for Christ. I will do whatever it takes to follow Christ. And so, 48 hours, we had to leave the country. We packed 5 suitcases, said goodbye to all the people we knew, and then we had to be on our way. And then the way you get deported in Uzbekistan is usually the government, the police comes, they put you in the car and take you over the border to a different country. And then you have to find your own way into the country. But that's extremely hard because all countries require visas for Uzbekistan. So we wouldn't be able to just go over the border. We would be stuck in between 2 borders. But because my dad's family lived in the United States, they were able to buy us tickets to Moscow. And just because of that, we were able to fly out of Moscow. I remember getting put on the plane, getting carried away. You know, we were handcuffed, walking down to the plane. And finally, when they sat us down in the plane, the police asked extra money for petrol, for gas, because they said the government is not paying us enough money. So my dad had to pay them money to get kicked out. And so finally, we were on our way to Moscow. We landed. We lived with a family, with 2 other families, so 3 families together, 12 people in 1-bedroom apartment. It was extremely hard. We all slept in one small room. Another family slept in the kitchen, and it was just so hard to see. And I remember this was the darkest moment of my life, living in Moscow. Moscow is a beautiful city with lots of culture and history, but there's so much racism and nationalism. And so even though I'm Russian, but I speak with a little bit of dialect, people wouldn't want to accept me into schools. I remember sitting in the classroom with principals and main teachers, with my mom and my brother, begging to accept us into schools. And teachers would call us monkeys. They would call us, we don't need dirty people like you in our schools. They would say, we'd rather shove a pencil up your body than you come to our schools. This is not a school for people like you. You will only do the worst things here for us. And we were broken. God, really, what is going to happen for us? And I remember that day, Mom and Dad decided that we are going to worship and pray together every single day till God gives us answers. That nothing is going to stand in the way. We will go after Him. It doesn't matter if we're tired, if we're hurt, if we're angry. We're going to go after Him with all that we've got. Finally, we got accepted into school. And I was so happy to finally go to school. I didn't go to school for like 3 or 4 months. So I was so happy to go to school. And on the first week of school, I walked into my PE classroom and I had to go into a locker room to change. And at the same time, boys from 11th grade PE class were leaving. And as they saw me walk in, they started calling me racial names, racial slurs, and started beating me up. And that caused so much fear in me. I was never beat up in my life, and here I'm getting beaten up by guys who are 10 years older than I am, who are so old, who are much stronger than I am. And I'm just laying there and nobody there to defend me. I remember walking home after that school day, and I was in so much fear. I was looking everywhere. Is there somebody who's going to jump out and attack me again? I was in so much fear. And I asked God, why? Why are you doing this to me? Why are you causing all this pain? Didn't I already suffer enough in Uzbekistan? Didn't my whole family done enough for you? Why are you doing this? And my heart began to grow cold for God. And my dad and mom in that moment said, don't ask why, ask what. What is next? What are we going to do with all of this that you have done? When we ask the question why, we're going to be in this cycle of anger and resentment. When we ask the question what, we can move and heal. And so that was a huge lesson for me. But in that moment, I did not understand it. I was still asking the question why. Then Russia said, you only have a few months and we will deport you from our country. You will be kicked out. And to me, that was heartbreaking. How? Where are we going to go? No other countries around Uzbekistan wanted us. Everybody said, no, we have great relationship with Uzbekistan. And if we allow you to stay with us, then it will show that we have bad relationship with them. In that moment, my mom was also pregnant. The day before we got kicked out from Uzbekistan, Mom found out that she's pregnant with her daughter. She was waiting for her daughter for 11 years, and finally it was her chance to have a daughter. And now we don't even know. Where is she going to give birth? What hospital? There's nowhere to go, nowhere to give birth. And so we begin to pray, God, show us, where are we going to go? United States said, you're not coming to America because 10 years ago you rejected our offer and we don't want you in our country. You've proven your disloyalty. We continue to pray. 5 days before we're getting kicked out, my mom is almost 8.5 months pregnant at this moment. 5 days before we're getting kicked out, United States Embassy calls us and says, you're allowed to move in. You can move in as refugees. You can find life here. For us, that was a huge answer to prayer. We could find a place that we can call home finally. And so the problem arises. My mom is at 8.5 months pregnant and she cannot board a plane. There's nothing she can do to board a plane. And so we are starting to pray again. We go to the first doctor because the doctor has to sign off and allow her to get on the plane. And the doctor says, no, you're crazy. You're not getting on the plane. Second doctor, the same thing. Third doctor, good thing he was a racist man. He says, yeah, you're from Uzbekistan. We don't want you in this country. He signs the paper and we were on our way to America. The problem was, though, that the city that my parents chosen to move to, I thought was the wrong city. You see, when I was growing up, I only heard of Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, cities that are big, Chicago. My parents said we're moving to Houston, Texas. My whole side of family, my dad's parents, cousins, uncles, brothers, all lived in California, a place where I thought we're going to go to. But my parents are saying we're going to move to Houston, Texas. I've never heard of Houston, Texas. We didn't speak no English at that time. We didn't understand nothing about American culture. And now we're moving to a place where we know one person. A place where there's not a lot of Russians. In my mind, I thought, Dad, Mom, are you guys stupid? Is this really the right place? Is this really the right move for your family? Again, why are you doing this? Dad again points me to obedience to Christ, obedience to God. And in that moment I realized there's no such thing as radical obedience. There's only obedience and disobedience. You either listen to the voice of God and what He tells you to do, or you disobey Him and His commands. When we obey Him, when we do what He tells us to do, we show Him our love. We show Him how much we appreciate Him. But we disobey Him, we turn our backs against Him. So the only option that we have is saying yes to God. And my parents kept saying yes to God, even though it meant sacrificing everything that they had. For Him, He was worth it all. And when we moved to Houston, it was amazing. I remember that day, first day in America, like it was yesterday. I walked in our apartment, and for the first time ever, there were 3 bedrooms in our apartment. Probably now it would seem like a small apartment, but back then I thought I'm living in a mansion. I opened the fridge, there were small cans of Sprite. Wow, I've never seen that before. Gallons of ice cream and pizza. I was so happy. And I thought, this is the American dream. This is what I want to follow. My parents still continued to do ministry. We lived in poverty in the United States, but God provided every step of the way. From housing to food, He provided it all. But when I was 14, I said to myself, God, I've given you everything I have. There's nothing else that I want to give you. I don't want to give you anything. I want to do my own life. I see American people around me doing just great things, making lots of money. I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of following your ways. I'm tired. I want to go do my own thing. I don't need you anymore. I will still come to church every Sunday. I will still read my Bible. That's all great. But I want to follow my way. And I will do that. And from that day on, depression began conquering my life. I felt defeated. Every day I would wake up. And on earthly standards, I was a successful guy. At the age of 16, I completely finished my high school education. And I was in college 2 years earlier. Going to college completely for free. People were like, wow, you're amazing, you're so smart. But inside I was so depressed. I knew that I needed something to change in my life. And I remember when I was 17 years old, God touched me and He said, are you willing to continue to live your life like this? Being depressed. And in that moment I realized depression comes because I am only going after my own fleshly desires. Depression comes because I continue to say no to obedience and I'm living in disobedience. And I said, God, I want to say yes to you today. I'm so sorry that I have chosen to live for my own self, that I have chosen to go after what was not prepared for me. And for some people, God prepares them to be business people. For others, God prepares them to be engineers, doctors, computer scientists, all these things. God wants us to be in those areas. But I was going after dreams that were not from God. And in that moment, I said, God, I'm going to surrender all of my desires, all of my dreams. I don't want nothing of myself. I want you to give me everything that you can give me. Give me your dreams. Give me your desires. Even if it means that I will suffer. Even if it means that I will live in poverty. I want to go with you. And from that day on, I remember waking up the next morning feeling like an adventure. Feeling like happy, feeling like something new is going to happen. I realized every time we say yes to God, we live in an adventure. We live in a dream. When we follow His dreams, we're living the dream. And so then God began to give me eyes for people. I used to living in Houston. I thought it was the worst place on earth. Let's go to New York. Let's go to California. Why Houston? And in that moment, God gave me so much love for Houston. He broke my heart for the people around me. He gave me love for the people that I've never even seen visible. And I saw refugees upon refugees everywhere. People who were just like me when I came to the United States, who were racially abused, who were kicked out from their places, who had to flee and find a way into a country where they don't know the language, where they don't know the culture, where they don't know anything. And I connected with them because my pain was a place where we could connect. I realized in that moment that my pain had purpose. That even though when I was young, I didn't understand, why am I getting beat up? Why am I getting kicked out? It was all for a point. It all had a purpose. And through my pain, I could connect and bring life into people's lives. And my brother, who was only 16 at that time, I was 18, and my cousins, 3 cousins who were 15, we said we want to make difference in our community. We want to start a soccer club, a soccer academy, where all of these unprivileged youth can come, who are doing drugs on the street from the age of 6 and 7, who are doing alcohol on the street, that they could come and we can build relationships with them and start discipleship process. People told us, you're crazy, you're 18, you don't have no money, you don't have no education, go finish college, go do this. This is not the right time. But all 5 of us heard that this is the call of God. This is where we need to go. Imagine an 18-year-old saying that we're going to impact the world together. And we thought that together. We believed that together because God gave us a dream. And so the problem was in that neighborhood, it's so poor. There are no soccer fields. We had no money. We couldn't even buy soccer balls or anything like that. And we said, let's go and pray for 7 weeks. Let's go and walk this area so that the walls would break down. We thought we were like Joshua and his army. We believe that prayer is our greatest weapon. It's a weapon that will last forever. Money will fade away. Our gifts and talents will fade away. But prayer will last forever. God will be on our side. He will be with us. And on the 7th week, we saw this church. It was tall grass in this church. And we thought maybe if we cut the grass here, we could play here. And so we decided, we knocked on the door of the church and the pastor opened the door. He's like, who are you? And we're just like, we're just students who want to change this community. And he said, okay, what are you doing here? We said, can we cut your grass for free if we can use this property? He said, yes, of course you can do that. And so we did that. We cut his grass. It was a field, not a perfect field, but we could play on it. The same day, there was another organization that called and said, we want to partner with you. We want to give you all the soccer balls, all the soccer equipment, all free of charge. Use it. We believe in you guys. We believe in your dream. And that was huge for us. Literally on the last day of prayer, God answered everything that we had. And then we said, okay, it would be great if we have like 5 to 10 kids at our first practice. But God sent over 30 kids at our first practice. Second practice, 70. And then the first month, we had over 100 kids that came and practiced. We were able to connect with them. And we saw that through sport, we can build unity in the community. These communities were so divided. They hated each other. They wanted to be as far away from each other. Most of the people at that time that we worked with were from Burma, Myanmar. And Burma is divided into different tribes. Karenni, Karen, different Chin, Kachin, all of these different tribes, Burmese, that live together. And they all hate each other. That's why they've been killing each other for over 50 years. Trying to kill each other, get each other's land. And now they're moving as refugees, all these tribes, and they're all living in the same neighborhood. and they keep on hating each other. They didn't want to play on the same teams. They didn't want to pass the ball to each other. But through biblical lessons and teamwork and soccer, we were able to teach them, how do we live in the community? How do we stay united? In that same month, finally, we saw just amazing unity in these communities. But we had a group of Mexican boys that decided to come and join us. They were all 17 and older, my age. And so I had to grow out my beard to look older in front of them. None of them knew my real age. They didn't know that I was exactly as old as they are. And I remember just a huge fight that clashed on the field. They hated each other. They didn't want nothing to do with each other. Burmese and Mexicans, they said, this is so wrong for us to be in one place. And so Burmese left, and I was happy. Finally, the fight was over. We split them apart. But then they came back with even more people. And one of them had a gun. And he said, look, if they don't apologize, my brother, my cousins, and I, we stood in this line dividing them so that they wouldn't fight each other. And they said, if the Mexicans don't apologize, we're going to start shooting. So they better get on their knees and ask for forgiveness. And we remembered in that moment that our only weapon is prayer. That nothing we say will stop it. Nothing we'll do will stop it. Only God and prayer can stop this. And so all of 5 of us, we started screaming in prayer. God, protect us. God, save us. God, bring your peace and comfort upon us. And this boy put his gun down, got on his knees, and he was the one who started apologizing, asking for forgiveness, asking that they were the ones that did wrong. That night, Mexicans and Burmese people came together, hugging each other, loving each other, and being together. If you come right now, 5 years later, you'll see people from Africa, Asia, South America, Central America, all playing together and loving each other. Nothing is dividing them. Nothing is breaking them apart. What started as a dream that we thought was not possible is now a ministry that has English classes, citizens classes, lots of discipleship going on, classes for children, art classes. We're now seeing that we want to bring holistic transformation to community. Everything starts with the spiritual transformation. We want to give them the gospel, and we believe gospel then will penetrate their hearts and bring life into them. Bring life into their social, emotional, physical, financial sustainability. It all starts with the gospel. What started as a dream of 18-year-old, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds that most people did not believe in is now a ministry that is working in 25 cities around the United States. And it's only God who can do it. Not us, but Him. He's the one who sustains us. He's the one who gives us strength. But if we want to follow His dreams, we need to say no to our dreams sometimes. We need to say no to our fleshly desires and say, God, give me what exactly you want me to do. And for some, He'll tell you, be a doctor. Go and make disciples among doctors. Go make disciples with business people. Go make disciples with athletes, with engineers. All of us are called to make disciples, but in all of these different areas. And God is calling you today to tell Him, yes, God, I want to be on this adventure with you. I want to go and make disciples. Send me to the right place. I know there are many people around the world, especially young people, who feel like they're done with God. They feel like, I don't listen to God. I don't hear Him speak to me. There's nothing changing in my life. They feel like God is so far away from Him. Just like I felt. I felt like God was so far, and there's nothing good He was doing in my life anymore. I know that many of you are battling with depression, with sadness, with anxiety, and you want to quit on God. You want to say, God, enough. I want to follow my own ways. There's nothing you can do to change it anymore. I don't believe you're even real, maybe. Or if you are real, your love is not real. I've been to that place. And it was a dark, dark place, and I understand how you feel. It's a place where it's so easy to give up. But I want to challenge you and tell you, don't give up on God. He is so real. Come to Him with all of your burdens. Come to Him with all of your problems, with all of your emotions, with all of your feelings. Surrender everything that you have to Him. Say, God, I don't want none of this anymore. Take it from me. Surrender your life. Like I said, surrender your fleshly desires. That moment is what changed my life. Don't give up on Him, because when you give up on Him, there will be times when you'll be even more depressed. Only He can bring comfort and peace. He is called the Prince of Peace. I challenge you to go to Him. When we go to Him and we give everything that we have, then we will turn the world upside down. Then we will go and see people's lives being transformed. Then we will see our lives being transformed. Don't keep anything to yourself. Surrender all you've got and go and change the world and turn it upside down. I have two news to share with you. One is a great news. The amount of Christians in this world is growing every single day. There are more Christians in this world today than there were yesterday, which is amazing. Praise the Lord. But another is a sad news. Sadly, the percentage of Christians for the past 120 years has been stuck at 33%. We are not keeping up with the growth of the population. And we're seeing as we're losing generation upon generation of believers. People are leaving the church. And I think we as the church need to really stand up and unite. I believe that there's so many people in our churches that need to say, I'm tired of living a comfortable Christian life. I want to go and make disciples. Matthew 28 verses 18 through 20, Jesus tells His last words before He goes up to heaven. He says, therefore, go to all nations and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything that I have commanded you. And I believe He's calling each one of us into that mission. I believe He's calling us into making disciples. And He's saying it's not just for a few. It's not just for those who have been trained in seminary, for pastors, for leaders, for older people. It's for all of us. It's for everybody who believes, who thinks that the gospel is the real news. We're called to love people with everything that we have. And the biggest way that we can show that we love them is by sharing the gospel with them, by going and making disciples. One author that I really enjoy reading said that you can truly measure if you love people by if you go to a store or to a sports field or to a gym and you wait in line and you look at people around you. And if your heart breaks for them, if your heart gets sad for what they're feeling, what they're going through, knowing their future, knowing that they're leaving in darkness, and you want to cry and you want to go and bring life into them, then you love them. But if you're standing in line at the store and you don't care about them, it doesn't matter what's happening around them, then you're missing that love. And that really touched them, because in that moment I realized that I don't love people around me. And the great commandment calls me to love. Calls me to love everybody like I love myself. And I went on my knees and I said, God, please give me love for people. And when He gave me that love, I understood that the best way to give love is to go and make disciples. That's why I believe that's our biggest mission. Matthew 9:38 says that the harvest is plentiful, but laborers are few. This means that there's so many people around us that are looking for Jesus, that are seeking spiritual things, that are ready to give their life to Him. But the laborers are few. Most of the laborers are just sitting in churches, living in comfort, going every Sunday, hearing a sermon, raising their hands during worship, but then going back and living Monday through Saturday like nothing has ever changed their life. Let's be a generation that says enough. We want to see the percentage of Christians increase. We're tired of being stuck at the 33%. Let's be a generation that loves people, that says we want to go and love people the best way that we can. Let's be a generation that says we're going to go and make disciples. That this is just not for the few. This is for all of us. Let's be a generation that stands up from our seats, from our chairs in our church, from our comfort, and says we're going to live an uncomfortable life, but we know that this will turn the world upside down. It's interesting, most of the disciples that Jesus selected were probably ages 13 through 15, except for Peter and Matthew. They were young kids. But what did they have? They had a heart for Jesus. They had a heart for people. They had immediate obedience. And that's what we need to have. Jesus doesn't care about our education, about if we have theology or not. What He cares about is if we have a heart to follow Him, if we have a heart that loves people, and a heart that wants to obey. And that's all that we need to go and make disciples. Let's go and turn the world upside down.